All right, I think we are live. So welcome everyone to another live Q&A here on the Maran Motoring channel. I hope you're all having a good weekend here. And so like all the other live streams here, we're always going to go for about 2 hours. I may go a little shorter today. We'll have to see how things go. But hopefully it's a little bit of a nicer weather day today than it is here in Pittsburgh. We've been having like nonstop heavy rain for a couple of days now, and it's kind of crazy. So maybe if you're stuck inside like I am, we'll go for 2 hours here and keep on chatting. But anyway, so like all the other live streams as well, I'll be giving priority answering to anyone who does any kind of a super chat or super sticker or anything like that. And also all the members will also get that priority answering. So I see, and there's also the heart thing now, which is a new thing. I'm not sure how that affects the live stream, but it's always nice to see the support and the love there with the hearts and all that. And so anyway, Trucking Car Guys here, Kyle, Steve, thanks for joining everyone. Hope you're all having a great weekend. Jeremy, thanks for joining as well. And Crosstrek, what's a good time to be on the elliptical? Hello, everyone. Great way to multitask as well. Yeah, that's awesome. You're doing something more productive than me just sitting here. That'd be a fun live stream to be working out while live streaming. That'd be pretty hilarious. But anyway, Eric has the first question. He says, why are wireless charging pads so bad in new cars? Any models you've driven where it actually works effectively? Great question, and I really agree. There are so many that are really bad. Most of them are pretty useless. And every once in a while, I'll try one just for kicks, and it's like, yep, this barely does anything, and it's always off and on. And a lot of them even get so hot, especially when you're navigating, that like trying to charge while navigating wirelessly, it's just like, at least my phone. I have an iPhone 13 Pro. It just immediately starts to overheat, and then it won't charge anyway, even if it is making good contact. So it's a whole thing. As far as cars where it works effectively, there have been a few recently where it's been really good. So one of the ones actually that works pretty well is the new Toyota Prius. So it has a little like pocket basically, and you just like drop your phone in it. It's really narrow, and it has like a spring that keeps your phone pressed up against there, and there's no real wiggle room. Maybe that means it won't work for all phones. Sorry, I got a little a little thing going on here. But I think it should work for most phones. There was one other one too recently that actually did a good job. I'm trying to remember what it is. It's not coming to me immediately, but there was another one recently too that actually surprisingly did pretty well. I think so it was the Mazda CX-90. That one actually did really well. It's just your normal pad and it's just rubberized, so I didn't think it would do great, but I don't know if it has a wider contact area or what, but I just had pretty good luck charging my phone wirelessly in that. But they are rare. It is a very rare thing. I try and usually cover my reviews if they actually work pretty well, but most of the time I will mention like this just doesn't work very well, because I do try and test them out, because yeah, most of them are bad enough that definitely do not make it a purchasing decision. I doubt many people do, but if it's something you think is a must-have, it might not actually be a must-have, because I think a lot of people, if they're going after a wireless charging pad, are going to be disappointed in most of them. So just kind of put that technology out of your mind, forget it exists, because it's not worth getting your hopes up about in most cases, unfortunately. And Carlos, thanks for joining in. And Jazz, I see, has joined, Spy Harpy, and many others. Luke says, I really want Toyota to make the Stout and put the Ford Maverick on its 2-week notice. I hope Toyota does something like that too. I think that would be an awesome idea. Jazzbo says, Matt, have you driven a Saab? Did you like it? Did not really discount them the last year, so I did not buy one. I've driven a few Saabs actually. Yeah, I drove the non-turbo version of that one from the late 80s, I think it was a 900. Yeah, I think I drove a Saab 900 two-door back in college it was like a promotional thing where we were driving a car around the campus to publicize an event. And so I was driving one of those all day. And then other than that, I drove a few back from auction when I used to work at the used car dealers. And the one that I was driving back is one of the few times in my life where I've had a car actually like smoking, overheating on me when I'm trying to like drive. And I just had to get it back to the dealership. And so I had to like pull over and let it cool off every once in a while, but it kept like overheating. That was really annoying, because I was like, man, this Saab is going to like just burst into flames at any moment. But thankfully I was able to limp it back to the dealer and have them check it out eventually. As far as newer Saabs, I've never driven any of the newer ones. I never did a review on a Saab or anything like that, but it's something I'd love to try. Like the 9.3 turbos or the older ones, I think are really cool. So yeah, always just sad to see Saab go. It's kind of a bummer, and it's always sad to see any car company go, in my opinion. So yeah, rip Saab. Sean, thank you so much for being a member for 12 months now. I really appreciate the support this past year. And he said, hey, Matt, going to be taking a 590-mile road trip each way, end of the month. Recommendations for my playlist, anything except pop country. I mean, that is so, subjective as far as not even music, but podcast preferences, things like that. So I don't know. I'm usually on my road trips, I just listen. I'm kind of old school. I still buy my songs off of iTunes whenever I like them enough, and I just have a collection of music. So usually on a road trip, I will just play my iTunes, playlist. I just on my iPod on my phone, and that's all I usually listen to. Pretty boring. So I don't really have any great recommendations for you. I'm trying to think. Um, there's I know there's one podcast that a buddy of mine really likes, and I've listened to one or two that were really interesting, and it's called Stuff You Should Know, I think. So that's non-automotive, but kind of an interesting, way to get educated about things from a fairly high level perspective. Kind of covers all the stuff you need to know, obviously, and is kind of a cool way to just be a little more well informed about other things, just as far as historical stuff, how things work, just all kinds of stuff. It's kind of cool. But yeah, I can't give you any other good recommendations. I mean, there's some cool podcasts, I've come across, but I've never been able to like sit down and listen to them myself to truly vouch for them. So I can't plug any podcasts, even though I'm sure there's plenty of great car ones out there. I just don't know of any myself. But I hope the road trip goes great, Sean. And I love road trips. So hopefully you enjoy it and have a good time. Fun for us. Thank you so much for the super chat. He says, hi Matt, or could be, I don't know your gender. Sorry for assuming. Says, hi Matt, fellow Pittsburgher here. Love the channel and thank you for your hard work. Thank you so much for your support, and it's awesome to see another Pittsburgher in here, and maybe I'll see you around sometime. I actually just like last minute spur of the moment went to Cars and Coffee yesterday morning for like an hour. I was kind of iffy about the weather. But the reason why I wanted to go is because I have an Integra Type S press vehicle this week, and I wanted to, have other people be able to see it and check it out. And I thought it'd be, an exciting thing for everyone else to see. And sure enough, it drew a pretty good sized crowd rolling up in that. And so went there for an hour. But if you're not going to Cars and Coffees, if it's something you'd be into, definitely check it out. It's every other Saturday at the Generalista Coffee. But maybe I'll run into you sometime if you ever go. But thank you so much for the super chat. And getting back to the other member questions here, I don't want to miss. Spy Harpy says the wireless charger in my Model 3 works very well, although the phone will get warm while charging. Yeah, and I mean, I think most of them do typically get warm. That's just kind of the nature of wireless charging and charging in general, really. But that's good that it doesn't overheat. So yeah, I've never tried it in the Model 3, but I've seen they have a pretty nice little dock on them, right? So kind of does a good job. I think that's really the key, getting back to the wireless charging thing, is it has to, one, be elevated, because I think the best ones are elevated. That kind of gets rid of some of the sideways, disturbances. And then you also have to have a little bracket around it, and anything that kind of grips your phone in a little bit better. But I mean, some of these ones, like some of the other Toyotas and other random vehicles, like I have a Subaru Crosstrek this week as well, the new one, and it's not even rubberized. It's just like a piece of smooth black plastic, and you're supposed to lay your phone on that, and magically it's supposed to charge. Like unless you're sitting parked, that's not going to work. And it's just like, I don't know if this is just like a half-hearted thing some companies do, just to like check a box and that's it. But I'm like, who thought that this was a good way to do a wireless charger? So it's just kind of, but there's a lot of companies that do that. I'm not even just picking on Subaru. It's kind of strange how that's been implemented. And so Carlos says the IS500 has a V8, I believe. So I think discussing Chinzilla says, hey, Matt, is the Lexus IS350 rear-wheel drive a huge difference than the 500? Is it worth the 10K extra price for the 500? Great question. So it's been a while since I've driven a rear-wheel drive 350. I've been driving the all-wheel drive ones the past few loans that I've had over the past several years from Lexus. But it's going to come down to your preferences as far as power and specialness. An IS500 is likely to be a collectible. IS350, not really. So it also comes down to how long you're planning to keep it for, what you're going for in particular. Do you just want the V8 sound, or do you want the extra power? What is it? And are you only focused on Lexus and you're not open to anything else? Because there's, other options as well. But if you're strictly going to go for an IS no matter what, yeah, it's just gonna be down to if it's really, is that V8 sound and that extra power worth an extra 10 grand to you? Um, Personally, for me, if it is only 10 grand or so price difference, I think that it's probably worth it because you're going to again save that on depreciation anyway, and it's a more fun experience. Obviously, you have worse fuel economies. So again, lots of things to juggle there and see what it boils down to for you. But it's a more special experience. It's more collectible. Um, yeah, and it's just an amazing V8. It's been proven and reliable, so you don't have to worry about anything reliability wise. It's a special car. I think if it's something, any kind of vehicle for anyone that's like a special thing, I think that if you can reasonably afford it comfortably, go for it. Live in the now, don't have regrets. If you feel a tug towards the IS 500 and you can make it happen, go for it. Because otherwise, you're going to have regrets if you don't go for it. And there's always going to be the IS 350s around to, fall back on. And you can always buy one of those if the IS 500 is overkill for you for some reason, or the gas just gets to be too much, or, whatever the case might be. But I'd at least give it a try. And chances are you are not going to lose any money, going from if you had to get rid of the 500. So I think it's a pretty safe thing to try and just see how it works out for you. Hopefully that helps. And moving on here, though, other member questions. Golf Rocker says, Matt, I still buy physical CDs. Nothing wrong with buying music and supporting the artist/musician. I buy CDs, then put the high quality CD to USB thumb drives for my modern car. A CD still is the best sound. I agree. And I love that the Bullet does have a CD player. Every once in a while, I will pop in a CD. And it's been a while, though, because I hardly ever drive that thing, sadly. But yeah, CDs are great. And I do still have a decent amount of CDs too, but and you see all the DVDs and Blu-rays and stuff behind me too. I'm a big proponent of buying stuff, supporting it with actual purchases, and having a collection. But I know that's getting less and less popular these days. Carlos says the Santa Fe has a nice wireless charger. It's a slot that you place your phone on. Yeah, those are definitely the kind of things seem to turn out to be the best. And I see Mr. Challenger Chris, thank you so much for rejoining the club here. I'm so much appreciating that support. And I see he said, finally, the membership worked. I'm glad you're able to get it to work there. Sorry about any kind of technical difficulties there. And Jeremy, thank you so much for being a member for 14 months now. It's so awesome. I really appreciate it. He says, hi, Matt, what's your take on the FA24 engine oil pressure issue? Should manufacturers honor the warranty in this case if no abuse was found? Great question. I know it's something some other people have been asking me about recently as well. And yeah, I think that is complete BS that it's having issues like that. And it's almost inconceivable to me that snuck past the engineers when, this is a car that's not only marketed for this, but I mean, they do the actual GR Cup series that's like sponsored and put on by Toyota. They've raced these things, a lot. They've, done all this. It's just strange that this is an issue. This should have been caught way early on, and 100% they should honor the warranty. And so whether that means that heads start rolling at Subaru, because I'm assuming it's a Subaru thing, in Toyota, there's even rumors that Toyota is thinking about going for a new GRD6 for the next generation and just not doing it with Subaru and doing their own thing. And this could certainly spur them in that direction, but absolutely honor the warranty. I mean, even there's a lot of companies that will even honor track blowups, even if you are driving it hard and stuff. I mean, again, these are sports cars we're talking about. We're not talking about, hopping in a Camry and trying to pretend it's a race car. Like, these are sports cars, and whether or not you're redlining it on the street or the track, people are going to be redlining these things. They're going to be enjoying them. And you should be able to do that in any car regardless, but especially in a sports car, it should be built to handle that. And you should have had oil pressure issues figured out a long time ago in the development process, way before it ever got to production for sure. And then now, being a year or two later here and having all these things starting to blow up, it's really annoying too, because like it's such a good car. And now I feel like it's going to start, rightly so. I mean, you want to make people aware of this issue, but it's going to start having this stigma. And then people are going to look at them like they're Alfa Romeos. And then, it's just like a whole domino effect, because all it takes is one bad thing that everyone is going to point to for the next 10 years to be like, oh, I'm not getting one of those because there's a guy had to blow up on track at 30 miles an hour or whatever. And then, people miss out on a great car, and people are scared away from a great car just because of something. And I get it. If Toyota and Subaru are not honoring the warranty, then yeah, don't touch them with a 10-foot pole until those warranties get honored. And, but it seems like from what I've I haven't been following it super closely, so do not take this as like the authority or anything, but it seems like Toyota, some like the dealerships and stuff, some of the lower level executives were rejecting this stuff, but then once it got pushed up higher up and got the attention that unfortunately it needed to get, then I believe the companies were, I thought Toyota especially was honoring the warranties and was making good on that. If not, I will call them out on it immediately because they, that's again, that is not some kind of weird thing. If they were modded, and these are turboed cars or some kind of crazy thing, then that's a whole nother thing. But for stock motors, that is complete BS to not honor the warranty, regardless of where it happened. So hopefully that is something that gets taken care of and it doesn't hurt the momentum of the GR86 and the BRZ. And I can say, I mean, I beat on the GR86 all day on track whenever I was on the media launch, a year and a half ago, whenever that was. Actually, I guess probably close to 2 years now. I mean, I was sliding it around. I was redlining it, bouncing off the rev limiter, all that stuff, no problems. Same thing, BRZ. I was ripping those things around the track on that launch. We were taking them around autocross courses, and I'm sliding it around and, going nuts in them, and no issues there. I've I had both for a week and was beating on them hard, the whole week for both the BRZ and the 86. Never had an issue. So, I don't know if it's luck of the draw or if there's just a few bad apples in the bunch or what the deal is. I don't know if it's just a lucky thing where I just happen to get lucky and have my oil pressure stay decent or what. I don't know, but it's definitely crappy. Hopefully it's fixed soon. Hopefully the warranties are always honored for this stuff. And, honestly, it'd be nice if they even just kicked in an extended warranty on these vehicles just to give people peace of mind and really reassure them like, hey, we've fixed this or we figured this out and we're going to, make good on this and support these people and not, do something crappy and, have them be high and dry with a dead motor in a brand new car. That's just crazy to me. So hopefully everything works out. But yeah, I'm really just nervous about the reputation of those cars going downhill because of this stuff, unfortunately. So other questions here. Red Yoshi says, hey, Matt, do you plan or want to have more kids? No, I think we're one and done. We're pretty firmly in the one and done camp. And so for us, that's just, it fits our life, our capabilities, what we're able to do. And we really just are really content too. And we're at the point where we don't have any desire for anymore. And it's, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of, it's a lot of work. And so that's kind of how we ended up on deciding on just one and done for us. And we love our daughter to death. And, it's so fun. And we're really happy that, we went down this journey, but it's one of those things where like, some roller coasters, it's really fun to ride them and you're happy that you did it, but you don't want to, you don't need to do it again. One of those kinds of things is kind of our feelings there on that. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I still highly recommend anyone that is considering having kids. It's still a great, really fun thing to do. If that's something you feel inspired to do. Jeremy Wang, thank you so much for gifting the 5 memberships there. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad to see everyone was able to snap those up there. And getting back to other questions, the old cookie says the wireless charger in my Polestar only works if I put my phone in the wrong way. The top of the phone has to face the driver. I have a small phone, so I don't think the coils line up properly. Yeah, and it's so strange that the coil thing is so terrible. I can't remember the company, but there was a company that was saying they were doing better wireless charging in their new models. It might have been Honda, but I don't remember. Someone's doing it recently to make them better and bigger coils, and I believe it's like the new Qi standard. I think there's like a new evolution there that's supposed to make it better and faster and all that. So hopefully that is something that gets rolled out in all cars pretty quickly. And Carlos says, Matt, do you keep the Mustang on a trickle charger? I don't, unless it's the winter time. And even in the winter, this past winter, like I didn't ever do it because we get like 1 or 2 days every month of the winter, it seems, where it still is inexplicably 50 or 60 degrees outside. And so I can take the bullet out, and I just do drive it a little bit in the winter as well. So in the past, there was a few winters where I was like, I'm not touching this car for the next 3 months. And so when it's something like that, especially when it's cold, I'll put it on the trickle charger. I have one. But Typically, and maybe I'm pushing my luck here, but, if the car sits for a month or something, it's fine. It hasn't had any issues. Again, the battery is about 5 years old now, so I'm sure it one day will not start up on me. Knock on wood, hopefully, I still have a few more years, out of that battery, but yeah, I don't keep it on a trickle charger typically, and I haven't had any issues. And it's also just kind of a pain, to have to pull it off the trickle charge or drop the hood. I just want to hop in the car and go. And so that's why typically I don't put it on there unless it's going to be sitting for a good long while. Raphael says, almost forgot, but I'm here. Thanks for joining us, Raphael. I appreciate it. And Carlos says, I wanted to track mine, but won't until the issues are fixed. Yeah, and that's really a bummer too, that that you have to worry about that, and that's something that, yeah, it's hurting your fun of your GR86 now, because you have this thing in the back of your head, and rightly so. I wouldn't track one either right now if this stuff was out there, and you're nervous about the warranty and all that. Like, yeah, I don't blame you one bit, but it's just really unfortunate that that's where GR86 and BRZ owners find themselves right now, rolling the dice just to have fun with your car on track. And Goth Harker says, not saying Toyota can't make a great engine for the GR86, but that car handles so well because of the Subaru boxer engine. That low center of gravity is really what helps that car. The GR86 is a BRZ. Yeah, it definitely helps a lot. And the center of gravity thing is certainly a valid thing. I mean, it's insanely low. But I can't remember how much. I remember reading somewhere about how much higher it is for like the GR Corolla motor, which is a little 3-cylinder, pretty small. You can still mount it pretty low. Maybe it won't be as good, but I don't know. I think it could be worth trying. And I mean, you look at the original A86, that was amazing, and that just had a normal inline four. So obviously, the reason why this is so much better than that is partially because of that engine and modern engineering and stuff. But I still would be open. I mean, there's a lot of other great handling cars that don't have, a boxer engine. So, I mean, I think they could totally make it work. I mean, you see the huge 6-cylinder in the Supra, and that thing still handles amazing in my opinion. So it certainly isn't like a requirement to have the Supra motor, I think. It complicates things until a new generation, though, because I was talking to one of the Toyota executives a couple of years back about, like, why not just put the WRX motor in? If you got all the mounting points, the same size engine and stuff, it's just the turbo. And it's like, well, yeah, you put the turbo at the bottom in a WRX motor. Typically, you have to lift that whole thing up. And he's like, it's not only just lifting up the engine, but then you got to lift up the firewall, and you got to change the seating position, because then you can't see over the hood because you have to raise everything up. And it was just like a domino effect of issues, essentially, is why, at least from an OEM quality standpoint, they couldn't do that. But it seems like maybe there is a possibility with that GR Corolla motor, if it's truly small enough, and it's a lot smaller than a 2.4 liter turbo FA24. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what ends up happening with that vehicle in the next generation, if there even is one. We'll see. It might just go electric for the next one too. Spy Harpy says, I originally found you when searching for S2000 videos, owned an AP2, also owned an original 91 NSX and currently a 92 NSX. If you're in the Bay Area, California, you're welcome to review it. Ever drove one? Thank you so much for the generous offer. That's awesome. I did drive an NSX once, and if you search, it was probably like 10 years ago at this point. If you search NSX on my channel, it should come up, I'm guessing. It was just a quick drive at it at night after a car meet, basically, in Long Beach that I went to. As far as Bay Area, I'm there fairly often just for all these manufacturer events, but they're always so tightly packaged with the scheduling that I never have any free time to do anything. And it's like, whenever I'm in San Francisco, like I was in San Francisco for the Mazda CX-90 thing, and I really wanted to go walk around on the hills where Bullet was filmed, and just didn't even have time to do that kind of stuff. So, but if I ever find myself with free time, I will definitely have to hit you up. If you want to send me an email too, that's actually the way I keep track of all the vehicles that have been offered to me. If you'd send me an email, that'd be great, because then I'll file it away with all my others. And then, if I ever do have time in the Bay Area, I would absolutely love to review your NSX. They're amazing cars, and S2000s as well. It's so good. You have very good taste in cars. Moving on here, I missed Tom. Thank you so much for the super chat. He says, hey, Matt, one of my friends has an FRS and says he's done with 2 doors. He wants a car that's 4 doors, manual, rear-wheel drive, or all-wheel drive. Any suggestions? That'll come down to his budget, because the first thing that jumps into my head whenever I think of something fantastic that's 4 doors and manual and rear-wheel drive is Cadillac CT4V Blackwing and CT5V Blackwing. Again, those cars aren't cheap, so I get it if that's cost prohibitive. Aside from that, like if you're looking at used stuff, I'd say Chevy SS sedan is worth a solid look too. Really fantastic driving car, still so underrated even to this day, in my opinion. Um, and they could, come with a manual for the last, I think, year or two. So they're out there. They're probably hard to find, but they're out there. And if, yeah, I mean, all-wheel drive, like my buddy actually just this week bought a new WRX. It's really hard to argue the WRX, especially now that Subaru dealers are discounting them. He got 2 grand off of his. Four-door manual, all-wheel drive. If you want something like that, doesn't break the bank. WRX is really, unbeatable. And so everything else that I'm thinking would be front-wheel drive. So if it's all-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive, those are really the top suggestions and probably some of the only things out there. I mean, there's some older stuff. If you go backwards, you could say E92 M3 or is E90 the four-door one? One of those. You could go for Audi S4. Those had manuals back in the day. RS4, again, depending on budget. There might be one or two others that I'm forgetting as far as new market stuff, but I'm pretty sure that's basically it. There's very few as far as manuals these days, but hopefully that helps him a little bit if he isn't already aware of those options. And let me see the other questions here. Ace of Spades says, howdy, thanks for joining us. Ace, Jeremy Winks says, I just realized you can't gift memberships on iOS for some reason. Interesting. I didn't know that. It's terrible. I'm so out of the loop on like how all that stuff works. I thought you could though. That's strange. I know some stuff there's still strangely like you have to do it on the computer for some reason. I don't know why. But Kyle, thank you so much for gifting 5 more memberships there. Hope you all have a good 4th. Thank you so much for your generosity, Kyle. I really appreciate it. I'm glad to see some of you were able to snatch those up, and I appreciate the hearts and the likes and all that there. It's a fun new way to interact and the congratulations things. Very cool to see that. So let me see other questions here. Button only shows up on web and Android. That's crazy. Wild Frame says hello. Thanks for joining us, Wild. And Ace says, I test drove a 2018 Genesis G90 5-liter Ultimate rear-wheel drive, 40,000 miles. It's a rebuilt title and price 15 grand below market for clean titles. The work seems clean, was inspected by and stayed by a third party. I think like we were talking about last week, rebuilt stuff, it's still total coin toss as far as whether it's going to be good or bad. That's up to you and your risk tolerance as far as whether that's worthwhile to have that savings for that risk. But it's always hard to say without really looking at it. And it helps if you have a friend who's like a body shop owner or something that can really go over it with a fine-tooth comb. But if you don't have that advantage, it's just it's up to you. That's really tough to say. Hugo says, hey, Matt, just tuned in. When are you going to review the Colorado? I saw a ZR2 and I got to say it looks badass. Yeah, Colorado, I'm hoping to review soon. So Chevy actually just reached out to me a little over a week ago to offer a Colorado for me to review. So hoping they can schedule that soon. The Chevy stuff that I get, though, comes from New York. It's like a 6-hour drive for them to deliver it to my house. So they usually try and bundle a few, and there's not really a whole lot of other GM vehicles in the fleet available right now for me to review. There's several new GM things that I would love to review. They're just not being able to be in the fleets just yet for media loans. So they may still just send one and that's it. Or they may just wait until there's a few other GM vehicles for me to review and then send it. So it could be really soon, or it could be months from now, depending on how they decide to play that. So hoping to review Colorado soon, though. And if you want, my rough impressions on what that platform is like, I did do the Canyon already, the GMC Canyon. Same bones, same engine, even if you're going for that top engine. A pretty similar driving experience, I'm assuming, to the Colorado. So if you want to make a patchwork of my opinion on a Colorado, the Canyon's probably a pretty good idea of what you can expect to hear from me as far as the Colorado. But again, there's other small little differences and things. But that's a good place to start for my thoughts on that. And Raphael says, from the weekly reset, even if Infinity, or from the weekly update, even if Infinity only announced 4 models, I'm glad to see them do anything. I want to see them come back, even if I prefer Lexus. Yeah, I mean, it's a good start. We will see. I just don't know if it's like a money thing for them. They just can't finance rebadging Altimas and easy low hanging fruit like that, or what the holdup is. But I agree, like, you're a Lexus fan, you want to see, Infinity do well. So I think that's the thing, is if there is this competition, then you will see, things get better a lot quicker. And without that competition, things, kind of go by the wayside. The Focus RS went away, and then Subaru was like, oh, maybe we don't need to offer the STI anymore. And, it just kind of hurts everybody if you don't have competition. So hopefully Infinity comes out with some great products, and that, further incentivizes everyone else to innovate and improve their stuff even more. Um, and Wild Frame says, I have a 2016 Mazda 6 2.5G, and yesterday I drove the new Mazda 3. I was considering the Mazda 3 since 2019 when it came out. So all the improvements are clear, but it does not feel as sporty as my Mazda 6. Yeah, they definitely, with the new generation Mazda stuff, they made the steering a little heavier, a little slower, I think. And I think that, in my impressions behind the wheel of any of these new Mazdas, they don't feel super eager to turn in. They don't feel as darty or as agile as the previous generation Mazda stuff did. And I think it really just comes down to the way they tuned the steering to be slower. And I think they try to give it this luxurious feel because, again, Mazda's just so focused on trying to be, an Acura and a Lexus competitor and all that. And so, I can certainly see where you're coming from there with that. And I think it really comes down to steering, at least to me, for the most part. It's that kind of dampens the handling experience a little bit. They're still great handling vehicles. They're very composed and everything, but I'm just like, working harder, trying to shove it into a corner than some of the other competitors, I think. Whereas like the Civic still feels really nice, but then, you can just slice through corners like butter in that thing, and it's great. And, the steering's got some substantial weight to it, but it's not overly heavy. And some of them are really extreme. Like if you test drive a new Mazda CX-50, that thing, it's like so heavy for the steering that I actually think the average consumer might be turned off by it, because it's like I was like, my arms were like tired all day driving a CX-50. I'm like, man, like this thing is like way too much, especially for a crossover like that. You want something that's, a little softer and lighter, and just not the case with some of these new Mazdas. I mean, they're still great cars, but just kind of a strange choice sometimes. Chandra Chris says, what other things did you not like about the Hornet? You will find out this week. Actually, tomorrow I'll be posting my week with the Hornet. And any of you that are Seinfeld fans, it could be summarized with the Festivus episode of, I've got a lot of problems with you people. Had a lot of things about the Hornet I did not like after living with it for a week. It makes a good first impression, and I'm hoping a lot of the things are just early production, teething issues. But yeah, I'm not sure I'm super into the Hornet anymore after spending a week with it. There were some glitches. There were some just like things I observed as time went on that I didn't love. And so, yeah, that'll be an interesting one. It'll be a good one to watch for all of you who, if any of you think that I don't do negative videos, that one, you'll hear me let them have it over the Hornet. I'm not mad about it or anything, but it was a little disappointing, and it's kind of surprising they send cars that half-baked even to media people, because at least me, I'm going to say, look, like this doesn't work right, and call out all that stuff. So you'll see that in tomorrow's video. It should be entertaining. Marco said, depending on their budget, there's plenty of options. Sub 50 grand, you have quite a pool of cars to choose from. And yeah, Marco said the Chevy SS as well. And let me see some other member questions here. I don't want to get too far behind. I'm hoping I'll be able to get back to some of the other non-member questions eventually too here. And Truck and Car Guy said Lancer Revolution 9 or 10, getting back to the manual four-door all-wheel drive thing. Another great suggestion. Yeah, STI, WRX, all those are also great choices too. And Carlos says, I've been intake and planning on getting the AWE touring exhaust on my GR86. This too much shouldn't void the warranty, right? They shouldn't, no. Some companies try to find grounds to do that. I would say between the two, the exhaust is a safer option because you can't really mess anything up whenever the gases are on their way out, so I've seen, and maybe it was a long time ago, some people having issues with intakes as far as warranty stuff, because now you're affecting the airflow going into the engine, and that could, be then interpreted rightly or wrongly by a, dealer tech as like, oh, well, this intake is why the engine did X, Y, and Z because the air coming in wasn't what the engine was expecting or whatever the case is. And obviously modern ECUs and stuff can compensate for all that just fine. And, especially a lot of people run an intake alongside a tune and stuff, which the tune accounts for the intake. So mostly it's just a BS excuse most of the time anyway, but at least with that, they have a little more grounds. I'm like, well, see, like the air is going through the engine, through this intake versus the exhaust is kind of like, you're not hurting anything going with an exhaust. So if you want to be ultra safe, do the exhaust and not the intake, but I don't think you should really have an issue with either one. Especially, I don't know what intake you're planning on doing, but if you really want to cover your butt, get the TRD intake. I believe they still offer one. They did for the previous generation. I thought I'm sure they do offer an intake from the parts catalog from TRD or GR or whatever, and buy one of those. And then, they really can't, give you crap for that then if it's actually from Toyota themselves. And CK says, with EV supercars on the horizon, when do you think performance will start to be limited to the public? That is a good question. And not even just like with the EV stuff. I mean, obviously that's wild. Like we were talking about in the weekly update this week of, Aston Martin, potentially having a 1500 horsepower car in a few years. But I don't know. And maybe this will be a little bit divisive, but I really feel like, some people don't want to have any restrictions or limitations on anything in this world. But I think that, letting just anybody get behind the wheel of something with 1500 horsepower, even 1000 horsepower is really foolish. And there's kind of some momentum gaining about this with the Hummer EV, because like you have 1000 horsepower plus 9,000 pounds. So when that 1000 horsepower, contacts anything, like it's a bad day for whatever's on the receiving end of that, accident or whatever. So, and with any of these EV supercars, they're also going to be heavy. And it's like you have these missiles that are just flying around with people that basically prove to a driving instructor when they were 16 that they can parallel park once. And that's enough training to let someone behind the wheel of something like that. It's definitely, to me, I think there needs to be a separate class of licensing for stuff like that. It'll never happen, especially in America. I think, so I wish that they would limit it, to the public and, it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be expensive. Just be like, hey, look, like, do a single high performance driving day, make it like a discounted group rate thing. So it's not overly expensive, but be like, hey, let's, go to, like, I've done a few of the driving schools, go to Bondurant, have all these people say, okay, let's go to a Bondurant or let's go to, a Skip Barber or something like that. Just for a day, just do a 1 day thing. Just be like, hey, here's how weight transfer affects handling. Here's why you let off the gas in mid corner, but when you're coming up to a corner, here's why you brake hard early and not late. And just all these things that, a lot of even amateur enthusiasts have no clue about. It's just these fundamentals. I think if more people understood weight transfer, you'd have so many less accidents, in the general public, especially around, bad conditions and roads and, that are snowy and things like that. And, I don't know. I wish that there was more restrictions on that kind of stuff, because it could go on the positive. And it's not just restricting those people, but also you could then, open up HOV lanes to people with that higher class of license and make the speed limits higher for people with those class of licenses. And obviously that's hard to enforce without having a giant sticker on your windshield or something. But, there could be upsides too, but it's just with the way everything's just a mess, with everything, there's no chance of it. So sadly, the reality is that it will go unregulated like everything else. And, it will be, bad for many people, I'm sure, as, this rise in power just gets more and more dangerous, and average speeds on the road already are up and up. So it's just going to be a bad combo, and hopefully safety tech and all that saves you. I think that's the thing. The only thing that gives me, peace about like a Hummer EV, and it's whoever is driving those things, is the fact that it has automatic emergency braking. It has some safety systems that hopefully will save these people from themselves. But, I think even my wife just told me, I think Logan Paul wrecked a Ferrari or something this past week. Again, I don't know him. I don't know anything about him, honestly, but it's just, anyone just going out and buying something, if you have the money for it, it's just can be a dangerous combo. Jeremy says, as long as it's not directly engine related, like oil pan, maybe oil cooler, but someone got away with it too. Yeah. So getting back to the G86 thing, better to be safe with that stuff. And Marcus says the regular Joe can go and buy a Hellcat. There's nothing limiting. They're not limiting anything. Yeah. Very true. So, this isn't a new phenomenon. The EV supercars just take it to the next level. But there's this stuff's been going on forever, and just one of those risks that we all take when we hop in the car every day. Carlos said, you have to send an application to get press vehicles from new brands, or is that already taken care of? No, you have to like make that connection. And so basically that goes down to emailing the PR rep for that company and, making your case. And then they have to approve you before the press fleet is then authorized to send you vehicles from that brand. Because there's like a lot of these fleet companies that I work with, they have vehicles from other brands, but I'm not authorized for those other brands. And so, even though they could send me the vehicles and they actually have them sitting there, I'm just not greenlit for them. One of the ones recently I tried my luck with was Bentley. Because they've started to do a little bit more press fleet stuff recently. And so I tried my luck at them, but they said I did not meet the criteria to get a Bentley loan. So understandable, very expensive, very high-end cars. And why do they need to promote them anyway? They sell themselves. So I don't blame them, but I was hoping to get lucky and maybe have some Bentley loans, but not that lucky just yet. Maybe someday. Goth Rocker said, I would never buy a salvage title vehicle, way too many sensors and electronics that have not, can maybe be not done properly. The safety systems, you have to have a dealer scan tool to make sure they're calibrated. Yeah, there's a lot of that kind of stuff for sure. Odd Frame says, regarding the Mazdas, yes, steering is less responsive and front end is not as edgy, most probably. Otherwise, the 3 is great. Yeah, totally agree. And Dom said, hey, Matt, I'm glad to be able to tune in again. I've noticed a ton of K5s in my area. Is it like that in your area? By the way, I'm still seeing Stingers, still love it. That's great. Yeah, I've been seeing Stingers every once in a while recently still too. But as far as K5s, yeah, there was a while there where I was seeing them like all the time, and then it kind of chilled out a little bit, but I still do see a good amount of them. I think it makes sense. They're such a good value. They're so cool looking. They give you everything you want really in that segment, in that class of vehicle. And yeah, I think there's a good reason why they're popular. But yeah, I am seeing a good amount, and I'm glad you're seeing some of them too, because it's a great car and deserves to do well, I think. And thanks so much for joining in, Dom. John says, thanks for the gift membership. Yes, so thanks to those of you who gifted those. It's always so kind of everyone. Carlos said, I had the TRD intake, but got a K&N, and it sounds amazing. I'm sure it does, yeah. Intakes are always a great improvement. Dom says, if you go aftermarket, swap the intake before you take it in for repairs. You could do that. But if it truly, it probably wouldn't be an issue with the intake, so it wouldn't be an issue. But if it was some type of airflow related thing that caused the failure, they can still go back in the logs and say, okay, well, the OEM intake would not have allowed this or that. And then they could still suspect foul play. But yes, if you're worried about them doing some BS, rejection based on something when it had nothing to do with it, yeah, swapping intakes doesn't hurt for sure when you take it into the dealer. And I remember back in the Subaru days, so many of those guys, would flash back to stock on the Cop Tune before these vehicles like data logged everything, and they could swap back and take it in the dealer for their usual service or whatever, and be like, oh, the engine blew up, what happened? And it's like, it doesn't show they're running Cop Stage 2 or whatever. And then, they kind of dodged that a little bit back then. Wild Frame says, Pajero is 1,000 years old. I know that Mitsubishi pulled out the money from their car industry some years ago, because I see Damien saying they should bring the Pajero to every market as the rest of the lineup sucks. Yeah, I think that one may fall under the chicken tax. I'm not sure why, but that is another. Yeah, Mitsubishi has a bunch of stuff in other places that wouldn't hurt to bring here. Just offer them up and see. I think some of the stuff might not pass our safety standards, but some of the other stuff, I think I totally could bring it here. And just, yeah, freshen up the lineup. I agree. And Challenger Chris says, do you think that the 1,500 horsepower is going to be a subscription? The more you pay, the more horsepower you get? Possibly. I don't know how the subscription thing's going to work for the exotic companies. I know there was, what was it? Wasn't Lucid? Oh, it was Faraday Future. Just a few weeks ago, I was talking in the weekly update how they were charging like 15 grand for like basically internet-based navigation and like remote start or something, and a few other like random dumb things. So maybe there'll be other high-end companies that try the subscription thing, but I think most of these people buying an Aston Martin be like, okay, well, instead of subscribing, unless they're leasing them, but if you're truly buying it and you plan to, keep it for a while, they'll just be like, okay, well, how much do I need to like pay to just like not bother with this subscription? And they'll just like, pay an extra, 15 grand or 30 grand or whatever it is to just like not be bothered by a subscription, most likely. There's one guy I know who's kind of wealthy, and he like prepays his bills that he can't like just pay off flat. Like, for example, his phone bill, he pays it once a year. He's like, just tell me how much I need to pay you so you don't bother me for the rest of the year. and he sends a check to, the cell phone company for, $3,000 or whatever it is, and is like, doesn't even want to bother with that. So I mean, I don't know how many other wealthy people are like that, but I don't think a lot of people, I don't think anyone likes subscriptions, honestly. So I'm guessing that they'll maybe give those buyers an option to just write a big check and not be bothered with it. I don't know. Raphael says, Matt, do you have a dream car brand? My friend dreams of a 911 GT2, but for me, it's Aston Martin. Every car just looks muscular and elegant at the same time. Me and you have very good, similar tastes, I guess I should say. Yeah, Aston Martin's one of my dream brands. Really, I'd say my favorite two brands are Aston Martin and Ferrari, as far as like wanting basically everything in their lineups. Those are definitely my top two. Porsche's up there too, but I don't love everything Porsche does. So versus Aston Martin, Ferrari, I basically universally love pretty much everything those two companies do. So those are my dream car brands for sure. Jasbo says, Matt, you don't need to be so modest. Bentley would have been fortunate to have you review their vehicles. Sincerely, Jazz. I appreciate that, Jazz. It's very kind of you. But I'm still just a middle-class guy here. I don't know how much insight I could give to ultra rich that are buying these Bentleys, but sure would be fun to drive just for the fun of it. I did have a great time. I've driven, an old Continental GT I did a review on a while back, and I've reviewed a couple of Rolls Royces, and so it's definitely fun to review that stuff. But typically on this channel, though, whenever it's super expensive, most of you aren't interested in watching it either, and I totally understand that. So it probably wouldn't have gotten a ton of views anyway. So I really don't blame Bentley too much. I'd have to have way more views probably to justify it, but it would have been fun. Linda says, I've been driving for 59 years and totally respect even the power of the EcoBoost. My skills just aren't good enough for anything other than normal driving. And that's okay. And it's, but it's so rare for people to say stuff like that these days because, no one thinks they're really a bad driver. If you ask, people, they generally think they're a pretty good driver. There's been a lot of surveys about this recently where it's like everyone thinks everyone else is a bad driver on the road except for them, most of the time. And it takes a lot of humility to be like, hey, look, maybe I'm not, the best and I can learn some stuff. And that's why, I really hope that there are more driving schools that become more and more accessible and, it's a really good thing for anyone to learn. Like, even whenever my daughter is of driving age, like I plan to, send her to like a winter driving school just to be like, hey, like here's how to handle yourself. And there's some other really good ones. There's like, I think even there's a kind of a police kind of training thing you can go through as well, where you're driving down the road and then all of a sudden they like yank the e-brake without you knowing, and you have to control it and catch it. And, just those types of things that are really, we're not talking about trying to set fast lap times. It's just about trying to be prepared for your own good and for the good of everyone around you, and it'd be great if more people cared about improving their driving and, being good drivers. But unfortunately, it's just, it's one of those things people just do. Like they got to take a shower every day. They got to go drive to work. It's just like, they have no interest in improving that, and that's totally fine. And everyone has to be into cars, but it just would make the world a safer and better place if everyone was better drivers, of course. Anyway, Marco says, I've started seeing more GV70s in Santa Monica, gorgeous SUVs with a Stinger motor. There was one with factory matte burgundy paint. Yeah, those look great. I still love the GV70. That's another vehicle, getting back to the K5 and the Stinger. I see so many around. I don't know about you guys, but I've been seeing so many GV70s ever since they came out. They have something going really strongly there at Genesis, I think, especially with the SUVs, and they look fantastic. If Beth and I hadn't gone with the Mach-E and we stuck with a gas-powered crossover, GV70 would have probably been it. That probably would have been the pick for us. She loves them too, and we actually were even talking, about the electrified GV70. If they weren't so insanely expensive, that could potentially be something that could tempt us away from the Mach-E, down the road. But they're insanely, I don't know why they're so wildly expensive compared to the regular GV70, but that really throws a wet blanket on the electrified version to me. But GV70s are super great though. They look so good. And Linda said, I'd love to be a passenger on a track day. Yeah. And, a lot of people that do track driving are really cool about that. Like I even, there was a few times when I was younger and didn't have anything else to do, where I would go to some of the local racetracks and just like hang around. Like you could pay $5, like get in and just like walk around. And I just, pay and just walk around and just talk to some of these people and take pictures and, maybe do a video or two just for fun back then. And there's a few of them who are like, hey, you want to go for a ride? And I had someone, that's how I went for my first ride in a Viper ACR. And obviously, it's kind of, you don't know these people and stuff, so it's not something you want. Everyone wants to trust their life with, someone around a racetrack, and I get that. But I mean, I was like, yeah, sure, me being 20 years old or whatever, and so. But it was amazing and really opened my eyes to the capabilities of the Viper and just track driving in general and all that. So if that's something you're not totally uncomfortable with, maybe try and figure out if there's a track near you that has any kind of high performance driving days, or if you can make any friends with, like, Mustang owners are really, friendly about that typically. And a lot of them do track stuff. And if you go on the Mustang forum and say, hey, I'd love to be passenger someday with someone, nearby, and go into the track, you meet up with them, they might give you a ride. And it's something I'd be happy to do if I did track driving on my own. But for me, I usually get my fill just driving on these media drives. Some of them have track time, and I get that out of my system, and then I'm good. Because for me, it's, not wanting to put the bullet into a wall and not have insurance after the fact, because they usually don't cover stuff whenever you wreck at the track. So that's one of the reasons why I've never tracked the bullet. And Kyle says the Jaguar F-Type with all-wheel drive is an amazing car. That would be a dream car. That still is a dream car for me as well. I still love to have an F-Type someday. They sound so good. Marco says on the Mark 7.5, I would recommend the M Mark 6 for the ones with a smaller budget, and go for the 2.5 motor for about $5,000. You have a solid daily for much less. So I guess I missed a comment earlier from someone else. Okay, but I see Ivan Canada is talking about, do you think used car prices will start coming down? They're still really expensive. And yeah, it's, I don't know when used car prices are going to come down, because it seems like some companies aren't going to ramp up production to their, pre-COVID levels ever. Others, they're trying, but, then you have the dealers now that are being more selective about, markups and stuff. Excuse me. I really don't know. I mean, I think the only thing that will help used prices is once this whole, I wouldn't say recession, but I think that we've been seeing for a good while now, repossessions are starting to go up, and they're going up more. And I think you're going to see now that these student loans are going to start becoming due here in the fall. There's going to be a lot of cars swarming the market, because there's going to be a lot of people dumping their cars so they can't afford them anymore. They've been used to not paying, student loans for 3 years. Now all of a sudden they have to. And I think you're going to see a lot of fire sales this fall. That could be a temporary short phase, or that could be something that we see sustained for a while, where you have people that, especially people that have student loans that are just like, I can't afford any of this stuff anymore. And you see stuff starting to get sold off left and right, whether it's cars, houses, whatever. I think I really think the student loan thing is really going to start snowballing that faster. Repos are already up, and then you add on, now you got to pay all your student loans again. That's going to get even worse. So if you're hoping for a good time to buy, maybe see if the crap hits the fan this fall. And if it does, then you'll see some much cheaper prices, because then everyone's got used stuff. Even though people are going to want to buy cheaper used vehicles, you're going to have everyone else dumping theirs so they can't afford them. And it's going to be a whole, avalanche there, I think, potentially. I'm no economist, but that's just my one thing that I'm, envisioning potentially, as far as some kind of price relief, as long as, again, you're on the right side of that. But even still, you buy a used car, you got an insane interest rate right now too. So it's just kind of everyone loses right now as far as buying a car. If you can avoid it, don't buy a car this year, unless you're paying cash, until these interest rates get back to normal, or unless the manufacturer offers you a really good interest rate. Otherwise, it makes no sense to buy stuff at the current average interest rates right now. It's just crazy. And let me see. Carlos said, I agree. I got the GR86 to learn rear-wheel drive to make me a better driver. And that's such a good car to do that on. And it's very, commendable of you to, go into that pursuit, because, a lot of people, they just want to jump right up to a Hellcat or something. And I think it's great to, kind of figure out rear-wheel drive, learn how it works and get hooked on it as well, like I did with the BRZ, and then, work your way up from there. And Wild Frame says 95% of drivers do not have performance driving skills and even don't care about, let's say, performance tires. God bless traction control electronics. Definitely. That's just crazy, crazy stuff. And let me see. So Omar says, is it too late to start buying each generation of Mustang Bullet, or have they all skyrocketed in price? Also, which generation should one avoid reliability-wise? It's, never too late potentially, because, I think it's conceivable that they're all going to continue to appreciate in value eventually. But as far as you just have to make sure you buy the right ones because there are still I'm still on the Facebook group for the Mustang bullet owners, and there are still some dreamers out there as far as thinking they can get insane prices or like they have some amazing car that's going to be worth $1 million someday. Like some of these people, they drive them like 1,000 miles, and it's just really sad, unfortunately. But um, I think they're all pretty solid reliability wise. I mean, they all have proven V8s for their generation. They're all pretty simple cars. I'd say reliability wise, honestly, if you're worried, the worst one to buy would be the new one because you have all the extra electronics in that. But even that stuff, I think isn't too bad. Like for me, I'm planning on eventually buying like some either junkyard or new old stock gauge clusters since they're digital and I know they'll burn out someday. Same thing with the touchscreens. And you have like the Magnum Ride dampers, which were optional on the 2019s. So there's that could go wrong, and the other general electronics. But yeah, I'd say reliability wise, stay away from the new one if you want to be super safe and just avoid all the electronics. But otherwise, the other ones are great. They're all awesome. Obviously, I love my 2019 too. But yeah, I think they're solid buys still, as long as you don't buy from someone who has got a super high price and thinks that they have, the most amazing car in the world. But as long as you buy from someone that's level-headed, it should be a solid buy, hopefully. And Garth Rocker says, Matt, Crosstrek that you have this week, is it the 2-liter or 2.5? It's a 2.5. Starting for this new model, the 2-liter Crosstreks are still made in Japan. 2.5s are now built in the USA. Yeah. So this is a 2.5 limited that I have this week. They also do have a 2.0 premium in the fleet that I may have sent to me, depending on how well the 2.5 review does. It just could come down to whether or not I think it'll be worth doing. But yeah, the one I have is 2.5. And I'll save my thoughts for the review video because I don't want to keep spoiling all my reviews. But yeah, it's an interesting vehicle. I certainly have some opinions about it that I'll share. But bottom line though, I wish that they still offered something with a turbo in that because the 2.5 is only so much it can do. It still isn't amazing from a power standpoint. But yeah, I'll explain more in my review video for sure. Odd Frame says prices are redlining. The economy needs time to readjust, 2 to 3 years. If everything goes good, Ukraine war stops, etc. A lot of ifs currently. Yeah, a lot of ifs, and yeah, we will see. That's why I mean, even I can't even say this fall how things are going to go, let alone 2 to 3 years from now. It's just typically in normal conditions, yeah, you give things a couple of years and everything evens itself out. But how the world is in such upheaval everywhere, it's like when's the next thing going to happen, whether it's some type of natural disaster or some type of political thing or something else where that takes down a factory, and then you have a supply chain issue for that reason or that reason. It's just like you have this stuff in Taiwan potentially. We'll see if cooler has prevailed there or not. But I mean, if that happens, forget about having anything with new electronics until all these factories come online in Arizona and stuff for TSMC and all these other companies. But there's a lot of, I mean, we are walking around on eggshells in this, political climate right now and stuff. So, I mean, at the drop of a hat, everything can go out the window again and you're back to, markups everywhere and no one able to get anything. And if Taiwan, something happens there, it's not even cars you got to worry about. It's phones, computers, everything, so we'll see. It's a crazy time to be alive. Goth Rocker says, love my mother's Crosstrek. Don't know how Subaru did such a great all-around car. Does everything well. Rides great. They certainly do. It is one of those cars that it does everything fine. I guess I just have higher expectations. I was just a little disappointed in the power, the 2.5, I think. Tom says, what's the coolest car you've ever driven? Mine was my brother's GT350R. That's definitely, I'm sure, a high point. I've never driven the R version, but even the regular 350s are magical. As far as coolest car I've ever driven, it's so hard to pick one. I really don't think I have like a number one favorite car I've ever driven because there's good and bad things about everything out there. I'd say one of the highlights though for me, again, being a Ferrari fan and stuff and never really having access to very many of those, the 458 Spider that I reviewed a few years back that was last year. Yeah, it was definitely one of the highlights for me. and was really like a special car I've always wanted to drive, and I finally got to drive it, and that was really satisfying. So that's definitely one of the top ones. Um, trying to think. McLaren 720S was also a high point just because of how insane it was. I don't think I'd ever actually buy one myself if I had the money, but it was still just a really fun ride and an awesome experience. So that's another top one. And then even just the Rolls Royces I've driven, I drove the Wraith and the Ghost, and even the two of those, not like I don't think I'd ever buy a Rolls Royce either. I'd rather have a Bentley, but it's one of those vehicles, to say, I drove a Rolls Royce. It's a special thing. It's a unique driving experience. It's really fun in a different way. And so that's another one that I kind of look back on and, just kind of smile about, like the fact that I got to drive a Rolls Royce, which is something most people can't say, so that's something I feel very fortunate to have driven as well. And Marco says, how's everything been with Matt? How's the family? We're doing great. Thanks for asking. Me, it's always the same. Everything's a blur. Everything's, I'm always super busy and overworked and burnt out in a lot of ways, but having a blast still, and I can't complain. So that's it's about as much as I'll go into depth on that. But thank you so much for asking. It's very kind of you. Truck and Car Guy says, that's part of the reason I got the Magnum. I had only ever owned front drive cars before, so having a rear drive means I can learn to control oversteer and such. Yeah, which is great. It makes you a better driver, and it feels good to improve your driving skills too, and to learn a new skill, and I don't know, it's just a very fun thing to learn. So kudos to you for getting the Magnum as well. Hugo, thank you so much for being a member for 2 months. He says, if I can get an old GTR, I would still love driving manual. Don't like the new ones. Yeah, those old GTRs are awesome too. And that is another one that's a very cool high point as well for the R32 GTR that I reviewed a few years back. Right-hand drive, first time driving a right-hand drive car, and a GTR too, which is, growing up as a JDM fanboy is like one of those like all time, like, drool worthy vehicles to drive. So yeah, those are awesome for sure. Another high point. And so Razzle Dazzle Dave, I see there's some people talking about that. So he said, Matt, a supercharged Mustang GT350 versus 2015 Nissan GTR. Which one should I go for? You're the car pro. You're too kind. But it's going to come down to what you prioritize. Obviously, I'm guessing if you're considering a GT350, you don't care about all-wheel drive, and that's not a selling point for the GTR for you. So, and obviously, one's a manual, one's an automatic. They're very different experiences, so it's really hard for me to compare them. It's going to come down to what you prefer. And I also have to say, I mean, again, I don't know also how much you can tolerate unreliability, but GT350 motors are temperamental. And I think even in the Ford Owner's Manual, it basically says like you should check the oil every 1,000 miles because they consume oil. And if you don't keep on top of it, that's on you basically. So it's a temperamental engine. I mean, a lot of people have put a lot of miles on them and haven't had issues, but it's just a motor you can't just treat it like a normal car. You got to keep up on it and really make sure that you are meticulous about your maintenance with those. So, and then you add a supercharger on, that would probably be beyond my reliability tolerance, but again, everyone's different. If it were me and those were my two choices, I would probably go GTR, but I also, have my personal bias of always loving GTRs. I love the 350 as well, but again, I think one of the reasons why, I mean, obviously I like the Bullet for other reasons as well, but one of the reasons why I went for a Bullet and not a used GT350, which was similar money back then before the crazy days, back in 2018, a used 350, I could have probably gotten for only a few grand more than a Bullet. But for me, it was just like the fact that I had to like really be OCD about the engine. It was a little bit off-putting, and fantastic cars though. And, I love the 350 to death, but I think the GTR is a little easier to live with if you actually plan to drive it a lot. And so that'd probably be my pick, but I mean, a supercharged 350 has got to be insanely fun too. So probably no wrong answers, again, depending on your reliability tolerance, I'd say. Let me see. So Spy Harper, though, he added in that my friend owned a 2013 GTR. It's a beast, really quick, drove it many times. I've been super It's been super reliable after 10 years. Find a non-modded one, well-maintained one, and you'll be set. Yeah, I agree. I mean, all the times I've driven the GTRs as well, they are wild, so much fun, fantastic cars. So I definitely recommend GTR to anyone that can afford it. It's just that they're so expensive. And, for the interior you get and stuff, you have to make sure that you're okay with just buying something that has an amazing platform and an amazingly engineered experience. But, for people who want a total package thing, it might not be the best. But, if you're into GTRs, I mean, they are fantastic, but it's definitely not cheap to get into them. And all right, so I think we've caught up on the member questions here. Tom says, how's the weather? It's going to be 109 here in Northern California. Thankfully, it's not hot here recently, but we've been having tons of rain, like little flash flooding incidents and things like that. There was 3 times yesterday I was driving around where the sky just opened up and it was like full blast windshield wipers, like white knuckling. Everyone's got their hazards on and stuff, kind of situations 3 times in a row yesterday. So that's the weather right now, but thankfully at least it's not hot, so that's good. Hopefully you guys stay cool out there in Northern California. So yeah, Razzle Dazzle says, I know it's like apples and oranges. I'll probably be picking up a GTR this week. Well, congrats if you do. That is an awesome accomplishment that a lot of people, I'm sure, are very jealous of. I'd love to have a GTR someday too. They're amazing all around vehicles and a lot of fun. So if you do go for that or wherever you go for, congrats on being in the position to have that decision to make. That is awesome. And I hope you enjoy whatever you end up getting. But it sounds like you're going to have fun no matter what you get. So congrats to you. Let me see here. So Luke says, have you ever ridden a motorcycle? It's a completely different thrill from a fun car. I rode one around my buddy's front yard once. It was an old BMW motorcycle. It was like really heavy. That was the only thing that I've ever ridden motorcycle wise. Motorcycles are really cool. It's just, for me, again, getting back to my risk tolerances, there's way too many distracted drivers on the road. Motorcycles are obviously very unsafe just because of no protection. So for me, no interest in ever doing motorcycle stuff. I've heard it is an amazing thrill. But for me, I have enough fun on 4 wheels. I haven't found myself wanting for more, especially these days with everything getting so insanely fast already, even as far as cars go. I haven't found myself wishing for more power, and basically anything. So I'm good, but I respect and admire everyone who has the bravery and the skills to, whip around on motorcycles, but not for me. Luke, also, thank you so much for the super chat. Luke, he says, I live near Weirton, West Virginia, and got caught up in one of those quick rainstorms on my motorcycle. Not fun. Oof. Yeah, that would have been sketchy. Glad you made it out okay, but that must have been rough. PK, thank you so much for the super chat as well. He says, is the Volkswagen infotainment still bad? Yes, but so if you're talking about like a GTI, I don't think it's a deal breaker because it's a great car that I think is worth looking past that. Same with a Golf R. But if you're talking about something else that has that infotainment system, like a Volkswagen ID4 or, like an Atlas or something, I think for those, there's better options out there that you don't need to settle for a mediocre infotainment experience, because the rest of the vehicle isn't redeeming enough, to make that worthwhile. But, if you really want a GTI or a Golf R, I wouldn't let it deter you. And I will say that, like, the guy that owned the Golf R that I did the quick drive video on last fall that was modded, I talked to him and he's like, yeah, I love it. He's like, it's great. I use CarPlay most of the time anyway, so I never really deal with the Volkswagen stuff that much, but he's like, it's great. I got used to it. And he's like, I really like it. That may be anecdotal. I'll have to see what other Volkswagen owners would say, but I think it shouldn't be a deal breaker. Bottom line. So hopefully that helps you if you're considering a Volkswagen. In my experience, I haven't had that many issues with it. Again, since I also do mostly CarPlay stuff, that gets rid of all the crappy software from any of these companies. So that certainly helps. So Carlos says, Matt, how was the air quality in Pittsburgh this last week? It was pretty bad in DC because of the wildfires in Canada. The air quality was definitely bad here as well. It was unfortunate because, it was really bad a few of the days there where like we couldn't even let our daughter go outside, because it was just, not healthy. And so, yeah, it's now thankfully better. It got better a couple of days ago here. But it was tough because I was actually in Ann Arbor, Michigan this week to review the Buick Envista, and that review will be going live in about 2 weeks. But that was, Yeah, it was really smoky up there, during the one part of the first day there, where it was not fun to film a car review because for the part was really smoky. I actually broke out my mask because I was like, I don't want to breathe this stuff in while I'm filming this review. So I'm like, I filmed all the B-roll with my mask on, then I took it off whenever I did the talking part outside there, and then on the inside, obviously, you just run the recirculating on the air and you're fine. But yeah, I think I read. I don't know if it was back whenever the New York stuff was going on, whenever there was the first round of wildfire smoke. But I think back then I remember reading it was like basically the equivalent of like smoking 6 cigarettes a day or something, breathing that stuff in. So yeah, definitely got to be careful with that. I hope it's all done though. I don't know. I thought that stuff was done already after the first time. And then it was like, oh wait, there's another round of it this week. I don't know what happened, but hopefully that's not something that's a continuing theme for the rest of this year or something. Um, and Marco says, I'm good on motorcycles. My little brother is a living example of why I won't ever want more for thrill. Yeah, I mean, even like the guy who's, sideswiped my Mustang, back in 2017 or whatever. I mean, I was fine aside from the side mirrors smashing my forehead. But other than that, he was the one who had a giant gash in his leg just because he miscalculated going around a corner and was going too fast and might have been drunk. And messed himself up bad. But, we were in a big four-wheeled vehicle and we were fine. So, not yeah, like I said, just not worth it to me. Carlos says he's forbidden himself from getting a motorcycle. I'd kill myself in one. Yeah, and that's a concern. I was even talking about one other buddy this week who's always really wanted a bike, and he said, so he's in the Navy, and he's like, I'm like, so what made you not, like, he just this week is like, I'm not going to get a motorcycle. I'm just decided I'm not going to ever have one. And I'm like, well, what made you change your mind? And he was like, 95% of the guys in the Navy he talks to that have had one have like had a bad accident and have had, gotten messed up on one. And he's like, it's just not worth it. And we both agreed, like, and I still say this, if I'm in a controlled environment, I'd love to try one someday. Like if I had the time and the money, it'd be really fun to try out dirt biking. I think that could be really fun. And I'd love to, put around on a dirt bike someday, just, out in the middle of nowhere. I think it'd be a blast. But as far as out on the roads, just, too many crazy drivers out there. And Goth Rocker says Nissan/Infiniti should have done an Infiniti version of the GTR, but then again, probably would not sell well as it's the GTR is already over 100 grand. So Infiniti version would probably be much higher priced. Yeah, but honestly, that's not a bad idea because, if they can already justify a Nissan that's over 100 grand and people are buying those, even if it's in small volumes, put an Infiniti badge on it, make a more luxurious version, I think would have been great. And they kind of could have done that with they'd had the Q50 Eau Rouge concept and they could have done a Q60 version, but those never saw the light of day. But that was a GTR powered Q50 and Q60. I think that would have been awesome. But they just decided not to do it for whatever reason. And I mean, those high performing things do certainly take a lot of engineering money to do. But, if you already have the engineering work done with the GTR, I agree. Try an Infiniti version. Throw an Infiniti badge on it. Give it a more luxurious interior and some more luxurious styling. Soften up the suspension tuning. Basically do the Acura Integra thing, like Honda and Acura did. Do that, but with a GTR. And yeah, you'd have some people being like, oh, I'm not paying an extra 30 grand for an Infiniti version of the same car, just like you see with the Integra haters currently. But, you can have people that would really like that, as we see with the Integra, which is selling really well right now. And yeah, I think that'd be a great idea. But again, I think it's one of those low-hanging fruit things that Infiniti won't do for who knows why. Tom, though, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, which engine do you think is more fun, ND2 or GRD6? I heard the ND2 engine is happier to rev. It is happier to rev. It's a little bit of a lighter flywheel in the ND2 as well. So I actually think, and it has a slightly higher red line, I believe, if my memory serves me correct. So I think for me, I would have to say it's close, but I think I'd have to say, yeah, ND2 Miata motor is actually a tiny bit more fun. They're close, though. I mean, you can't go wrong with either one, but I think if I could keep the center of gravity of the GRD6, but I could put the ND2 motor in it and have it have the same horsepower as the GRD6, which would be a stretch, obviously. But if that mythical setup were possible, I think that would be one way to make the GRD6 even better, is to do ND2 motor with the same, 228 horsepower or whatever. That would be amazing. Because the ND2 motor is glorious. Such a good motor. I love that thing to death. It's so good. And Hugo says, my dad still has an 89 Civic with 600,000 miles, still strong. That is impressive. That is awesome. I hope he keeps going with it too, because that's like that's like a mark of pride for yourself at that point. Like that, you've put. I'm assuming he put most of those miles on himself. I mean, to do it's a badge of honor to have a car that high. I still really wish to someday get the bullet up to insanely high mileage. It'll probably never happen. But my original goal was to hit 200,000 miles in that car. But I'm obviously making slow progress. I haven't even hit 20,000 yet, and it's been 5 years. So yeah, but I so much respect people that put huge miles on their cars. It's so cool. And I don't know if you were on Hugo, the Mileage Impossible page on Facebook, but if you aren't, your dad should definitely post his odometer on his Civic to that page. They'd all be very impressed because, I'm always in the discussions on there. People are talking about, these insanely high miles they're getting out of whatever it is they're driving. And it's always fascinating to see. And let me see. So don't want to miss any other questions here. So try and find my spot. Well, have a drink while I do. Wild Frame says he doesn't know a motorcycle that didn't fall at least once. Mike says, Matt, do you know when the Blazer EV at Equinox EV press event is? I do not. So I was having drinks with some of the Buick executives at the Envision event this past week. It was a bunch of us that were all hanging out just after dinner the one night having a drink, and I asked him, I'm like, yeah, like they said summer 2023 for the Blazer, like what's going on? And he's on the Buick side, so he doesn't have all that information, but he is going to be switching over, and so it's something I think he's going to let us know soon, because there hasn't been a ton of communication as far as what's going on there. As Equinox though, that is going to be, I think that was still never scheduled for anything earlier than late this fall. So I wouldn't expect any kind of thing until the very end of the year as far as press events for the Equinox EV in particular, but Blazer was supposed to be this summer. I saw, like they said, the first one just rolled off the line this past week. They posted on Facebook. So I'm guessing usually once they start production, you can expect, it seems like once they build a few extras to have for the media drive, then you usually see a few weeks after that is when they have the media event. So I would assume that Blazer will be the end of this summer based on that rough, guesstimate. But I haven't heard anything. Chevy doesn't usually invite me on very many press events either. It's weird. GMC, Buick, and Cadillac are really good about invites, but Chevy is like a completely separate thing and completely different, luck there for me and a lot of other people in the car reviewing world. So I don't know if I'll even get invited onto that. I may not even have a clue what's happening until, I see everyone else post about it on Instagram. But yeah, Blazer should be sometime this summer still, I think, but probably would be, I would guess August or something like that at the earliest. Wish I had a better answer for you though. And Sean says, hi, Matt. Any chance to review a VinFast VF8? No, and I will be avoiding that car like the plague until they get their stuff fixed, because it is, if you read the reviews on that thing from the first drive event, it is not ready for prime time, in my opinion. And it would be a car that I honestly probably wouldn't feel totally safe driving, honestly. It seems really sketchy. I definitely wouldn't put my family in it right now. It sounds like from what I've heard, they are really taking the criticisms and the critiques to heart, and they are really working hard. So I hope that they can improve things, but I think that things are being rushed right now and they are not ready at all. And they're already on sale, which is the insane thing, but they do not seem like they're ready at all. So no, and I also have no contacts with VinFast, and since they're a small company, like I haven't reviewed any Rivians or Lucids or anything like that yet either, because they're all very tiny press fleets. So it's not like these big companies where you get a press vehicle, a couple of weeks after the first drive event or something. So it'd be really tough to even get one, even if I wanted to review one. But I will probably actively avoid the VinFast until they're a much larger, safer, more proven company. And there's such slow volumes. I don't think there's very many people that would care to see a review on one anyway. So there's that whole component too. And Goth Rocker says the Infiniti Q60 was such a sharp looking coupe. Whenever I see one, I say if I ever get a coupe, that would be it. Looks great, has power, and offers all-wheel drive. It's a fancy 370Z in many ways. Right. They're great cars. I love the one that I had for a week. It was awesome, the Red Sport. And Yeah, I think the only thing is the infotainment's a little dated, but now they have CarPlay, or they did have CarPlay in their last year or two before they got discontinued. And you can also retrofit CarPlay into the older ones. And so, yeah, I think it's a great vehicle. I think it's actually kind of underappreciated. And yeah, if you want to have a brand new Nissan Z motor in your, coupe, but you want the automatic and you want something that's a little cheaper, Q60 is the way to go. It's been that thing's had the Z motor with 400 horsepower for excuse me, like, was it been 5 years now or something? So it's been a while, and they're great cars, and it seems like no one really appreciates them. And Wheatman, thanks for joining. He says, good afternoon, Matt. Happy 4th of July. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Hope everyone has a great holiday weekend. And Linda says, my husband wanted a motorcycle, and I said no. Yeah, I don't blame you for that one. Hopefully he wasn't too sad about that. Marcus says now I can go for a sports car instead, though, right? Yeah, hopefully that means he can have something fun in another way. And let me see here. So Garth Parker says, if I didn't live in PA with such bad roads and crazy weather, I would have had a motorcycle. But now with the cell phones and distracted driving, I'd rather be in a car, no doubt about it. Yeah, I totally agree. Raphael says, I got my first motorcycle at 7 years old. I've had a few small accidents, but I don't have the personality to really act up and take crazy risks. So I've had a long riding career. That's great. And I mean, yeah, I know people that do, ride bikes, they've had good luck. And, as long as you're an extra defensive driver, like I'm sure you are, it's one of those things. Hopefully you can avoid a lot of the distracted drivers, but it's just, yeah, it's just one of those things. Yeah, some people can handle the risk better than others, and I commend you for having more guts than I do. It's awesome. I'm sure the reward is awesome, and I'm sure the rush and just the excitement is probably unrivaled. So I can totally imagine the wildness that must be. But kudos to you for having the guts to do it. Marcus says, speaking of Nissan and Infiniti, what do you think of the new Nismo? I don't know if you guys talked about it. We haven't talked about it yet in this live stream, but if the rumors are right about being automatic only, I talked about this I think last week in the live stream, but yeah, that'll be the whole thing everyone's gonna be talking about nonstop once that becomes official. And it's just sadly another Nissan miss. Just like how they're not putting the limited slip diff on the base Z's. It's just one of those things where it's like, do they know what enthusiasts want or not? I don't know. Just strange choices. Anyway, the truck and car guy says, I doubt it will sell as well, since a lot of people recognize the name GTR. So I guess I'm trying to see which one that's referring to. Oh, about the Infiniti thing. Gotcha. Yeah, he says, because Hunter says that maybe the Infiniti would fix the interior on the GTR. Possibly they did. I think they definitely made the interior a lot nicer though on the Infiniti, or on the newest GTRs. Like was it 2017, 2018? They did the new interior with a nice like saddle brown leather and all that I think really helped it a lot. And the new infotainment system I think helped. Gave it a nice improvement. So they've made some good changes, I think. It's just that they're so expensive. If they were like with the price that they were whenever they first came out, obviously I know there's inflation and stuff, but if it just kept up with inflation and didn't just balloon beyond inflation, I think it would have been, a lot more compelling. Now they're just, really for only GTR fans that are very deep pocketed and nobody else basically. And Marco says, hey man, what happened to your badge? I'm not sure what you're referring to there, but there should be, I don't know, maybe you're talking about the verified thing on YouTube or something. That should still be there. I don't know. But I'll look for another follow-up question if you want to explain. But anyway, Hugo says, people offered to buy my dad's Civic, but turned him down at special. I totally agree. That's awesome. I'd hang on to it as long as he possibly can. That's very, very cool. Truck and Car Guy said, how to trigger two fan bases at once. GTR Evolution. Yeah, that'd be cool if they teamed up or something. Yeah, it'd be awesome to see Mitsubishi come back to their heyday someday. Mike says, how far in advance do they usually notify you guys before press events are held? Is the time window like a month? Yeah, it's typically about a month ahead of time that we have heads up on stuff. There's a few companies that especially if they want to make sure that you go, or they really are, if you're high on the priority list, you'll get a save the date. ahead of time. So like I have a save the date for a couple of things that are further out than a month. But typically it's about a month is in advance when you get the invite for stuff. Some of them are longer, like for example, with the Toyota Hawaii event for Grand Highlander and Tacoma, that came in April, and we did that. Or no, that came in. Yeah, that came in March, and we went in middle of May. So that was one that had a little bit more of a lead time, but that they also wanted to save themselves on plane tickets, I'm sure, by buying all that stuff a little bit earlier in advance. But yeah, it's about a month. Alex said, "Hey Matt, regarding Infiniti, why don't both they and Acura have a product in the subcompact SUV crossover segment like Lexus has the UX? That segment with high demand doesn't make financial sense to me." Well, Infiniti tried with, what was it called? The QX30. It was basically a rebadged GLA. Didn't seem like anyone really bought them, so I guess that's why for Infiniti. As far as Acura, I don't know. Maybe they're worried about going too down market, but yeah, I think it would make sense for them to make a nicer HRV or something like that. But yeah, honestly, I don't have a good answer for you. I don't know why they haven't tried. It's a good idea for sure. And Carlos says, I don't feel like the Nismo Z will sell if it's automatic only. Totally agree. I think there will be obviously some people that buy it, but yeah, I don't think there's going to be I think it's going to really sour that car if it's automatic only, and it seems like it will be. So it's just, unfortunately, get ready for more Nissan disappointment a little bit. Wad Frame says, do you consider the IS 350 fun, or is it already inferior in every way compared to the new rear-wheel drive, all-drive sedans in this class? Maybe better than the front-wheel drive ones. I think the IS 350 is kind of in a unique position where it has aged really well, and it's aged well because it offers stuff that no one else offers anymore, with a naturally aspirated six-cylinder, and a smaller dimensioned luxury compact. Everything else has continued to grow and grow and grow, and the IS never really grew. So I think, it's every time I'm behind the wheel of an IS, and I talked about this in my IS 350 review a couple years back for the refresh, it's this different experience because it's just a little more compact, a little more, just a little more darty. It reminds me more of like the Cadillac CT4 now, which is the only other kind of one that really is in that kind of a size class, really, as far as just actual dimensions go, regardless of what it's classified as. But I mean, yes, if you were talking about 0 to 60 times, if you're talking about legroom space, trunk space, objective measurement things, yes, it's inferior in basically every way now, aside from reliability, where I think, you have that old proven motor. It's a Lexus. Everything's going to be super solid. That's the one. If you're going to actually buy and keep your luxury sedan for 10 years, I'd go IS 350 all day over the BMW, the Audi, the Mercedes, any of that stuff. So that's the charm of the Lexus, and always kind of has been, but especially now as time has gone on and everything else has evolved and it really hasn't. I think that's really the charm of the IS right now. And, it comes down to whether, again, what your priorities are. If your priorities are the fastest 0 to 60 time, go buy an M340i, save your money there. If you want the best deal as far as driving dynamics for your dollar, buy a Genesis G70 or something like that. There's definitely better buys for a lot of, people, but I think it still certainly has a good following for good reason, I think, for people that value what it offers. So Marco, okay, he's talking about Truck and Car Guys badge. I could have sworn it was a 12 plus one. Yeah, it should be, unless there's a glitch, it should be able to keep track of how long you've been a member pretty good there and give you the right badge. But if anyone has the wrong badge, let me know and I will be happy to look into it. So let me see. Truck and Car Guy said he's been a member for 2 months or over 2 months now, but hasn't hit the 6-month one there. So hopefully everything's working okay for all that. Anyway, Tom says, do you think the Mitsubishi 3000 GT VR4 is going to eventually get to super prices? No, because I think the Supra just has the appeal. It's got the movie appeal with, being famous and the Fast and the Furious stuff. And I think that really grew the following beyond the Supra. Because I'm old enough to remember when the Supra wasn't like that special. I remember in the 90s and stuff, they were really expensive and you didn't really get, they were punchy, and, people that knew what the motor was capable of and the tuners and stuff, to them, it was golden. But for the average person cross shopping that with, a BMW coupe from the time, or, Mercedes SL. I mean, the Supras were expensive. You go back and look at what they were. I mean, they were way more expensive than they are now when you adjust for inflation, which is always fun to do with any of these cars. People complain about being expensive. All you gotta do is look at how much the old one was and adjust for inflation, and then that argument goes out the window for basically everything. But you know, I think the Supra really took on a new life with Fast and Furious stuff, and that is going to keep those prices artificially higher than they naturally would have been if it was just a good car that was from the 90s. I think that unfortunately the VR4, it has the rarity thing going for it, and that will keep prices high, but the appreciation and the well-known nature of it isn't quite as saturated as the Supra, not even close. So I think it's going to be one of those things that's more niche. Same thing goes for even the Stealth, which I think is even more rare for the Stealth, turbos or whatever they were called for their version of the VR4. The super ahead of their time, super amazing. They had active suspension, variable steering, all these things we hear about in high-end cars today that Mitsubishi and a Dodge had, 35 years ago or whatever, 30 years ago. It's crazy. Those cars were amazing, but just underappreciated, kind of like a Subaru SVX, which I think is also kind of underappreciated. A flat six and these, Giugiaro stylings and, all this cool stuff, and no one really cares. I even tried to shed a little light on the SVX with my review back this past winter, and nobody watched it. It's just like there's some cars that are really cool but just underappreciated, and I think the VR4 is one of those that the rarity will keep them expensive but never get to super pricing, in my opinion. Goth Rocker said, Matt, when I renewed my subscription, if it reset my month badge. Not sure if that is because I was gifted my first month of membership or what the deal is. Not a big deal, but the badge is wrong. Interesting. Okay, so I'll have to, try and look into that and see. It shouldn't, because it was gifted to you, because that's supposed to, I believe, still start the clock even if you're a new member with the gift. And if you go beyond that, then that should still be recognized in the badge. So I apologize if that's not right. Let me see. I will try and look into that. I doubt YouTube will have very many answers for me or you, because they're not great about that stuff, but I can contact support and see. If anyone else has the wrong badging as well, let me know, and I can definitely try and look into that. But that's interesting. But thanks for letting me know. And Raphael says, I remember the Supra 3000 GT and the 300ZX coming out. I really wanted to buy one, but they were all far too expensive. Yeah, well, that was way before my driving age, so I couldn't even dream of ever wanting to buy one back then. But I remember, I think I actually went into a Toyota showroom back in the day, and there was one sitting on the showroom floor, and it was like 60 grand or something even back then. And I was like, oh man, like that's crazy. Those things were always pricey. And Dom's asking, any talks about an R8 successor? The last thing I reported on the weekly update several months ago now was that, whatever is coming next will be electric. It'll be different than the Huracan, because they're splitting off. The Huracan's doing its own development now. It's on its own unique platform, unique engine, all that. R8's not going to be a trickle down thing like it was in the past. So, anything that's coming next is going to be electric and probably be on the next generation Audi platform. But it's going to be a while. I don't think you should expect anything until at least like 2026, the earliest, probably longer than that even. But hopefully they come up with something eventually, because I think it'd be great to see a successor. Marco also said if there's a new Huracan, then there's probably going to be a new R8. Unfortunately not. Lamborghini has confirmed they are going forward with development on their own this time. No subsidizing, no teamwork there. It's Lamborghini said that thankfully the last gen Huracan and the Urus, really the Urus is what gave them the funding to be able to continue with the next generation Huracan, which will be called something else too. But that new car is only possible because the Urus was a huge hit, and helped to finance them being able to do it on their own, because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to do it on their own, and the Huracan would have gone away when the R8 went away. But thankfully they're going to keep going with it, thankfully. So that's very fortunate that all worked out for Lamborghini. Harris says, just got a new 2023 Accord Sport Hybrid in white. Your review over everyone solidified my purchase. Looks are subjective to me. Amazing. Interior is sick, and it's a great cruiser. Thanks again. I'm so glad the video helped you, Harris. I saw your comment earlier as well, and I think I responded earlier this morning. But I'm so glad that you like it. Thanks for stopping in the live stream here too, and I hope the Accord treats you well for a long time. And I'm so glad the video helped you. That's end of the line, the bottom line, end of the day. That's why I do these reviews, is to help you guys find a car you're going to love and just help make the world a slightly happier place, one car at a time. Just everyone having something they enjoy, I think makes everyone's stay a little bit better. So I'm glad to hear that you were able to get a new Accord, and congrats on being able to buy a new car. That's awesome. And he also says, hope everyone has a blessed week, by the way. Thank you, Harris. Hope you have a great week as well. And Linda says, aren't the perks the same regardless of the number of months? Yep, perks are all the same. It's just the recognition of, being a supporter for a longer amount of time. So yeah, Marco, I didn't realize about the R8, going off on its own thing. Yeah, it'll just be different because it'll be like, totally electric versus the Huracan, still having the gas engine. So it'll be interesting to see how the two companies, now that they're splitting off, how they do things differently for this new generation here. Let me see other questions. Go back and see if there's any non-member questions here I can get to. I see there's some messages that get retracted. I'm not sure what's going on there, but hopefully you guys aren't having any issues with putting out the comments. Let me see. So Luke says, my motorcycle is a 94 BMW inherited from my stepfather. He taught me how to ride on that bike. That's awesome. It's great when you have those like sentimental, connections. And he says, Acura HDX 1.5 turbo, 200 horsepower from the Integra is a nicer HRV. That'd be great. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I don't know why Acura doesn't. I'd love to ask him someday. Car Castle says, Honda CRV or Toyota RAV4? I would say CRV drives better, but RAV4 is, I think the RAV4, well, okay, I guess I should say, if you're going for turbo CRV, I'd be a little more comfortable in the RAV4 because it has the non-turbo motor, and turbo motors can be totally fine for many hundreds of thousands of miles. But if you're going to keep something a long time, I think the RAV4 is the better pick. Otherwise, and also the RAV4 is the better pick if you want cooled seats, because the CRV doesn't offer that. It's also the better pick if you want a panoramic moonroof, because the CRV doesn't offer that either. There's a few weird exclusions with the new CRV that I don't know why they didn't do. But other than those few things, in most cases, I'd say I'd pick the CRV over the RAV4 currently. Again, assuming we're talking about the normal versions, if you're putting the RAV4 Prime on the table, I would definitely take a RAV4 Prime over any CRV, because the RAV4 Prime is amazing, one of the best cars on the road, in my opinion, just for the amount of perfection of the plug-in hybrid setup in that thing, and how it would just be perfect for 99% of Americans, commutes, and drastically reduce emissions for everyone, like overnight, if they actually were able to build as many of them as they do regular RAV4s and people actually bought them. But if you're talking regular CRV versus regular RAV4, I'd say probably, if you don't mind not having cooled seats and a panoramic roof, I'd probably go CRV. But there's lots of other great options out there too now with the new Sportage, Tucson, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of great choices out there. Let me see. We got a couple more questions here, then maybe we can start winding down. So, and Dom says, make people happy one car at a time. That's a t-shirt. Yeah, I mean, that's a cool idea for a shirt. That's a good point. I don't know. I mean, people don't seem to be too excited about buying merch on the channel, so it's not something I really invest a lot of time in. That could be a fun quote to put on a shirt if anyone's interested in that. I'm just horrible with graphic design, so I have to like pay someone to do the design for me, and it's a whole investment that usually doesn't pay off with merch just not doing well for me. But that's a cool idea, Dom. Goth Marker says, I remember in high school seeing the classic Toyota Supra in the showroom. It was around 65 grand. Missed those days. Sorry, that is my favorite Supra. It's the one that'll always be remembered. Yeah, those classic Supras are, the Mark IV is, they're just special. And for me, it's the Fast and Furious thing. I think that, I have the model down there. I mean, it's, just a car that just is burned in my brain as being super cool, but the new ones are fantastic though. I definitely love those a lot too. Wild Frame says, here in Europe, literally every next model will be electric. Everything goes in history. I spoke with Volkswagen Audi dealers. This is the last generation of the ICE here. So sad. Yeah, they're going full steam ahead, but there is, I think they're starting to wonder a little bit because while some companies are doing really well with their EV sales and they're really strong, Volkswagen, they just announced that they are going to be slowing down production on the ID4 because I guess they're not selling them as fast as they were, and they're starting to see demand soften. And now Porsche is also supposedly reconsidering getting rid of the gas Macan whenever the electric one comes out. There was talks they'd maybe sell alongside each other for a year or two, and then the gas one would go away. But now they're thinking about maybe like doing another refresh for the Macan and keeping it around longer because they're not convinced that maybe there is as much demand there for the EV versions as they were expecting. So, you know, like I've said many times before, we will see what happens. Everyone's got plans, everyone's got ideas. We will see. There's a million variables like we were talking about earlier that could change that, overnight, even, as far as wars go, as far as whatever goes. I mean, there's so many things that could change. So, don't count ICE out just yet. Even if everyone has these plans and they're making their investments, which certainly seems to suggest that like none of this stuff's going to stop or change, at the drop of a hat. But, if stuff doesn't pan out the way everyone's hoping and expecting it to, on the car industry side, you might see some wiggle room in those deadlines and goals, and everything could get pushed back. There's just goalposts for now. We will see what happens. Could come sooner, could come later, but I wouldn't, think that these are hard and fast deadlines for any of these companies. It's frequent. A lot of these companies make plans, they make big claims, and then sometimes that stuff doesn't always come to fruition. So we will wait and see how the world changes in the next 12 years. A lot can change, one way or the other. You never know. So we'll just have to wait and see. Linda, thank you so much for the super chat. She said just a few dollars for your daughter. Thank you so much. I love kids, having taught preschool for 22 years and also have 2 grandchildren. That's awesome. Yeah, kids are so much fun, and that's part of why I spend so much of my free time. I don't do a lot of the things I used to do anymore because I just always want to hang out with her because it's just the best. It's just so much fun. And thank you so much, though, for your generosity, Linda. I really appreciate it. And Luke, thank you so much for the super chat as well. He says, I like plug-in hybrids. You get the best of both worlds. Yeah, and I've been preaching that in all of my plug-in hybrid reviews I've been doing. It really is the best of both worlds, I think. And I think it, especially for the unique American buyer that typically drives more than, those in Europe and other places in the world, I really think plug-in hybrids are a great introduction. You don't have any of the anxieties. It's really, unless you can't park in a garage or in a driveway. Obviously, for those people, hybrids are still a great option. But if you have the ability to plug-in hybrids are fantastic. And there's really not many compromises, if any at all. I love them. So Wild Frame says, I can't send super chats, but thanks, man. Have a nice day. Thank you so much for joining in, Wild Frames, and no worries there about the super chat, but thanks so much for the comment. Don't want to miss any of the others here, though. Omar says, in your experience, is it easier to get approved for lease or loan on a new car, being a first-time buyer? I think between the two, it's really just going to come down to how the math works out, as far as your debt to income ratio, those types of things, your experience as far as credit experience and how much of a history you have credit wise. But between those two, I don't think there's going to be too much difference, because even for a lease, you're still getting approved for a loan. It's just a lower loan, because it's you're not paying the loan, but you have to be approved to pay X amount of dollars over the course of a period of time. So I think, obviously if you're going for something more expensive, it might be easier to get approved for a lease if it's for a shorter period there versus a loan. I don't actually know the differences between those two. Marco says first time buyers get all sorts of perks. I got 1.9% APR and 0 down when I got my 2015 Focus with the 1-liter EcoBoost. Okay, so yeah, there might be some perks there. I'm not aware of anything. For me, it just comes down to the math of it all. But if you're getting approved for less with a lease, then that should make it easier versus a loan. But you're just kind of locked in with a lease too. So that's kind of the back end of that that's a little tricky. Is unlike a loan, if you're struggling to keep up with it or something, you can always sell. Yeah, you can't do that with a lease, unless you try and find someone else to take your lease over, which is a whole headache and hassle and kind of tricky to do. So, it's going to come out of your personal, setup. And you can also, if you've already decided what vehicle you want, you have your dealer run both, and they can usually tell you, hey, this is what's possible with a lease, this is what's possible with a loan, and kind of go from there. But I'm not an expert on that, unfortunately, so I can't give you the best advice, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight there, Omar. And sorry, Goth Rocker said Ford CEO just announced they're halting EV research and money and now focusing on hydrogen. Ford has not made profit on EVs, so they're not seeing what Toyota is doing, or they're now seeing what Toyota is doing and taking notice. Interesting. I hadn't heard that. I'll have to look into that, and maybe I'll cover that in next week's update. I mean, Ford's doing great with their EVs, though. I mean, they still can't build them fast enough. So, but if they're worried about long-term stuff, maybe all these companies are starting to see there be a little bit of a slowdown. I don't know. I mean, I think hydrogen is great. And if there's some type of technological breakthrough that can make the hydrogen a little easier, it's just the infrastructure and everything's already been put into the EV stuff, and that's where all the investments are going. So I don't know. We'll see. But I mean, yeah, that's the thing. 12 years from now, a lot can change. So who knows where we'll be as far as technology and all that back by that point. But anyway, Carlos says I'm out for this week. See you next week, everyone. Happy 4th. Thanks for joining, Carlos. I'll probably wrap it up here soon. A couple more minutes as well. Tom says, what are your thoughts on the Pontiac Solstice? Doug Demo reviewed one a while back and said it's a better Miata. So yeah, I haven't reviewed a Solstice, so I can't say any opinion really about how it drives. I've never driven one. I drove a Saturn Sky briefly when I worked at a dealer, but it was like literally up the street and back. So I can't give any good thoughts on the Solstice. It seems really cool. I think they're also another underappreciated car these days, because everyone is excited about Miatas instead. I mean, I don't know. I guess compared to that generation Miata, you could say it's potentially a better Miata than the. But the thing is, the Solstice is never going to be as reliable as the Miata. Yeah, I don't know. I would have to drive it to say, but I'm inclined to differ from his opinion. But I don't know. I'd have to drive it for sure. Mike says, Matt, do you think dealers or OEMs will win the inevitable battle when it comes to direct to consumer sales for all brands? I don't know. I think dealers here in the States have a very strong coalition of lawyers and stuff ready to go for any kind of challenges to these types of things, and they've had that stranglehold on car sales for a century now. But I don't know. It seems like the OEMs are getting real creative about workarounds for this stuff, and it seems like they all want to get rid of the dealers. I mean, I think these past couple of years have showed everyone, OEMs and consumers, that we need to get rid of these dealers, because whenever they are given power and they're given this monopoly, they abuse it. Most of them do. Now, there are some that don't, and I commend and take my hat off to those that don't, and it's great. But unfortunately, the reality is the majority do abuse it and are, getting rich off of it. And I mean, if you actually, look at how dealer owners are doing over the past few years, they've never had a better time in their lives. This has been the best 3 years of their life. They're all raking in the cash with all these profits, and it's disgusting that they're doing this on the backs of everyone's misery. But I hope so. For me, I hope the OEMs win. We will see what happens. I think the OEMs are the ones making the vehicles, so I think at the end of the day, ultimately they do have the power. They just have to get creative about how to do it without being dragged into court a million times over. So I think hopefully the OEMs will win eventually with enough creativity and enough pushing. And I think the writing's on the wall for these dealers, for the next, I don't know. We'll see how long it takes to, do that switch over, but I think it will happen eventually, hopefully. And Challenger Chris says, after the Explorer fires, not sure I want a Ford hydrogen bomb. Sarcastic comment. Man, yeah, there's the Explorer. That's been a problematic model for many, many years. And I don't know if you remember all the rollover stuff in the 90s with the Explorers, but all kinds of missteps there with those. And Mike says, don't the OEMs have more money in total than the dealers? They do, but the dealers do have power over the OEMs in a lot of ways, because they are the connection to the consumer. They are the only way these companies can sell these vehicles. And it's this weird, frenemies kind of situation, I think, right now between the two of them, where it's they need each other, but they both secretly probably hate each other's guts kind of thing, And I mean, a lot of OEMs will say, oh, we love our dealers. And they probably do love the ones that are, not being jerks. But again, it's just unfortunately that's not the majority right now. But in terms of paying for lawyers, like you said, yes, but the law is the law in a lot of ways. And so, right now the franchise laws are set up to make it really tough to do anything outside of what's already currently set up. So if you have all the money in the world, unless you go and try and change those laws, but again, they got that stuff all locked up nice and neat, and they've had that stranglehold, like I said, for a long time. And so it's going to take something else to get that to change. It's going to be really tough, even if you have all the money in the world, to try and get rid of that. But Marco says there has to be laws that need to be changed. Yeah, in order, for the manufacturers to be able to do that. Yeah, so that's gonna be the problem there. And Garth Walker says, speaking of dealers being abusive, the new Nissan Z is still offered at a great low price of 90 grand. What a joke. Yep, and that's why, like, I think last week someone was like, "Oh, like they must not be selling very many Zs. I don't see any on the roads." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's probably because all of them are sitting around the dealerships collecting dust. That's the problem. It's just." And then everyone who worked so hard on the Z and everyone who tried to put their best foot forward and really price it well-ish. I mean, they also didn't price it the best with, like I said, the base model. But it's just, I would hate to be working for an OEM and like pour your heart and soul into an amazing vehicle like the GR Corolla, for example. I talked to some of the people that worked on that car and some of these others. And I mean, I didn't ask them about the markups, but you got to imagine that they're crushed. That they made this amazing car, and then Toyota's like, we're gonna be awesome. The community's gonna love us. We're gonna sell it at 45 grand. How about that? And get everybody amped up. And then your entire hype just comes crashing down whenever the dealer says no one can buy one for that price. And yes, I know Toyota's kind of doing that themselves, for example, with not being able to churn out as many of them as they churn out RAV4s, but that's just the nature of these types of vehicles. And so it's like, they tried to give people the chance of, hey, you can have this awesome car for 45 grand, and they would sell them. I mean, Toyota's only making 45 grand on them, but the dealers make the rest of it. So it's not, the companies aren't profiting from this. All they're doing is being hurt by their brand image, being soiled by the dealers. They're awesome cars they're putting all this hard work into are now not sitting, or they're sitting around, they're not moving, they're not selling, all because of the greed of some of these dealer owners who are just ruining it on both sides for both parties, and just so that they can get rich. It's just I won't keep ranting about that, but it really sucks, and I hope that it ends at some point. Mike says, another question though, outside of rural areas, why are OEMs not punishing dealers hard for selling over MSRP, or is it because we're at the point where a majority of dealers sell above MSRP? So OEMs they don't have very much power to punish. That's the thing. That's another area where they've tried to get creative, and like with like the Z06, Chevy's like giving people like a few $1,000s worth of Chevy points if they don't sell in the first year. And, other OEMs are limiting allocation to dealers that they know are doing markups. And I think that's really the solution, is just be like, okay, well, we're not sending you GR Corollas if you're going to be jerks about it. Like, and literally, and I think there's only so much of that they can do as well. Cause I think I don't think they can completely lock a dealer out of a vehicle that's in the lineup. So I think their hands are a little bit tied there, but yeah, if they had, power to do whatever they wanted, I'd just be like, okay, the second that someone does a markup, like, we're not sending you any more of that car, and you're not getting any more of them until they're MSRP, and really just, make it, strict. But, then they'd have lawsuits over that as well. Cause like, oh, we don't have the freedom to do whatever we want. Cause that's what, everyone wants to say these days. So, it's just one of those tug of wars that unfortunately the person that loses at the end of the day is the consumer, like always. And Spy Harper says, buying my Tesla was the easiest car buying experience I ever had. No haggling, markups, finance push for useless extras. Not a fan of dealerships anymore. Yeah. And I think that's part of Tesla's magic formula right now. And I mean, that's why everyone else wants to copy it, because they know it's great. And I mean, I certainly don't love everything about Tesla, but that is one thing that they are brilliant, that they started that from the beginning, the right way, doing the online only thing. They saw what the future could be, and that you didn't have to have this miserable experience. And they avoided that. It was so incredibly smart from the planning stages to do that. And yeah, that's what I've heard from most people who buy Teslas. They're like, yeah, like they're super chill at the experience centers or whatever, where you can test drive one. My buddy got to keep one for a weekend. They're just like, oh yeah, take the Model Y Performance for a weekend. We'll see you on Monday. And they don't even care. They're super chill. But even if you don't want to deal with them, like you said, you have a few clicks online, and then they drop it off on a flatbed. It's great. So it's amazing, and yeah, I can totally understand why it's such a great experience to buy a Tesla. Obviously there's other things like the fit and finish and stuff after you buy it, but at least the buying process is great, and that's awesome. So yeah, kudos to them for avoiding that bullet. Tom, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, do you think Subaru is going to make Toretto edition like the BRZ, just like when the GT86 had the TRD version, the BRZ had the TS? Right, 100%. I fully expect Subaru to do something. I would be more surprised if they didn't do a special edition. And I'm assuming they'll also have the performance package, because again, I'd be really surprised if they didn't, because again, it all swaps over. It'd be silly not to. So I don't know though. We'll have to see. I'm guessing we'll hear something pretty soon. I'm not sure what Subaru would have up their sleeve as far as a special edition though for that. I believe there's the idea of like a 10th anniversary edition, like Toyota did last year for the GR86, but I mean, that ship's already sailed, so I don't think Subaru can do that. So, excuse me, I don't know what they're going to do, but I'm guessing they'll probably do something. And Marcos says it's basically a lose because dealers win. Yeah, it's everyone. Well, I was being OEMs and consumers lose, and the dealers are the ones that win. But yeah, you're right. It's a lose. Hunter says the local Ford dealer by me had Lightnings for sale, 50 grand over MSRP a year ago. Now they're all on a 10K discount because no one's buying them. That's great, and that's the karma I was hoping to see. Hopefully, we see a lot more of that, and people start to get some good deals out there. But seems like that is the case for some, but there's some others where markups are sticking around, unfortunately. So we'll see how long that lasts. And Goth Rocker says, I hope Subaru does a Wilderness BRZ. Honestly, I mean, with the Safari Edition stuff, going on these days from everyone, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, honestly. And I think Subaru actually may try that someday. I don't know. Maybe they won't, but I think they'll probably do a Wilderness version of the WRX first. But I could see maybe in a few years there being a Wilderness BRZ, maybe after they've run out of other ideas for how to keep it interesting and fresh, But that'd be honestly, I wouldn't be mad about that at this point. I think that'd be kind of cool. I would just have to shield my eyes from all the hideous body cladding, but otherwise it'd probably be pretty cool. Mike says, when dealers discount vehicles off MSRP, if there's no manufacturer incentive being run, is it the dealer taking a loss? Is it just the dealer taking a loss on it? Well, there's holdback on cars and there's invoice pricing, so the dealers aren't paying MSRP themselves. They pay invoice minus holdback. So there's, their costs are certainly lower, and they have that, built in. And that's why, you see these vehicles that are, you can have that negotiating room like you've had for, ever since the car was born. So, I mean, there's that. And there's also, like the dealers on their end, they finance their inventory. They don't pay cash for every car that's sitting on their lot there. So there's also a cost associated with, having those cars on the floor. The floor costs are kind of what they're referred to typically, where the longer that car sits, the longer it's being financed by them in their, multi-million-dollar inventory financing or whatever. And that's hurts them a little bit as well. So that's why they're eventually, time is on your side as a consumer. If no one else is going to buy it, eventually they will, try and get rid of it before it comes out to be, a horrible loss. But I mean, eventually, yeah, sometimes dealers do take losses on some stuff. But I mean, usually most cars, there's at least $3 or $4 grand, be below the MSRP before you have to worry. Some cars it's tighter. Some cars there's only $1,000 or something. Depends on the car, but a lot of times they have a lot of wiggle room there before they're actually taking a loss. And Challenger Chris says, yeah, we compete with the lifted Mustang for the Wilderness BRZ. Yeah, the Raptor Mustang, it's coming, it seems. So get ready for all that stuff. And Marcus says, I think Subaru is exotic enough for that, Matt. We'll see. I don't know. The Wilderness stuff's been doing really well for them, so they may just put it on everything in the lineup. We'll see. So Marco said, but on second thought, why did they kill the STI? Yeah, I don't know. That's still a mystery to me. I'd love to someday find out why the STI got killed. Maybe we'll know. Maybe we won't. North Parker says, everyone have a good 4th. Got to get going. Yeah, and we'll be wrapping up here. We'll hit the 2-hour mark in a couple of minutes here. Tom says, I know people who don't do their research beforehand and just pay whatever they're told to pay at the dealer. My friend bought a new 10th gen base Accord for 37 grand. He pays over $700 a month. Yeah. I actually heard another story as well recently. My brother-in-law is a Toyota salesman, and I refuse to refer anyone to him because he still does do some markups on some stuff. And I always give him crap for it every time. I always give him crap for it because he knows how much I hate it. But he said like he just pre-sold a Grand Highlander to someone, and he they put 5 grand on and 5 grand markup, and the person was looking at the invoice, was like, oh, I see there's another 5 grand charge here, and he's like, yeah, it's the markup, they're gonna be kind of hard to get for a while, and so if you don't buy it, someone else will, and that's, he kind of went into a little bit, but the guy's like, oh no, I get it, no worries, like, here you go. But the guy was making over 300 grand a year or something, and the Grand Highlander, I guess he just didn't care about having some type of more luxurious thing, even though he could afford it. And so someone like that, 5 grand's nothing, whatever, and so they pay it. But I feel like even if I was, insanely rich, I still, it's just on principle, it kind of annoys me. But other people don't have that hold up. Everyone's different. Everyone has their comfort levels, whatever. It's just unfortunate that just going into one person's pocket, at the end of the day. And Omar says at this point, they should have a Costco type of car selling store where they buy in bulk and pass the savings on to the consumer. Yeah. I mean, that's not a bad idea. I don't know why something like that hasn't hasn't already happened. I guess there's got to be some good reason why that hasn't already happened. But yeah, like a group buy on cars, like they used to do on the forums, and be like, hey, like we'll buy 10 grand Highlanders. You give us X amount of dollars off or something, then distribute that. That'd be great. I don't know why that doesn't happen. All right, so I think we're hitting the 2-hour mark here. So I will get going and get off my soapbox here about the other markups. So thank you all so much for joining for another live stream here. I hope you guys have a great holiday weekend, the rest of your holiday weekend, and into this week here as the holiday continues. But thank you so much for joining here in the live stream and for tuning in, watching the channel every week. I really appreciate all the support. Got some good stuff coming for you this week, as many of you members know, especially. You saw the upload schedule here. Got a lot of great stuff. Get ready for that Hornet video I mentioned earlier on Monday, and then some more good stuff later this week. So anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.